Hey all, today we're going to talk about transfers in the digital scrapbooking world. I see them all the time in my kits, but the term transfer, quote unquote transfer, is a little bit ambiguous to me. And so I've been thinking on it. I have to analyze everything. That's what I always do. And that's what this lesson for course 2 on the website, mycorneronline.com. This is going to be a new lesson for course 2, new challenge for you to use transfers. And first, I think most of this lesson is going to be understanding what a transfer is. That's been the hard part for me. I see them in kits all the time, and I'm like, why is that called a transfer? And I love using them though. They're like one of the fun things that I like to go to really be artsy with my layouts. So I've created this in Photoshop just to walk us through. A transfer is when you transfer from one medium to another. And then you say, what's a medium? Well, a medium is two means of doing something. So inking with an ink stamp might be one means, and stenciling might be another means of doing something. You see it called mixed media in there's the mixed media world that kind of carries over into our digital world. People create mixed media by hand, and then they scan it and extract it, and they put it in our digital kits for us to use as elements. And so it kind of blends over into our digital world. And so basically, if we're thinking in the hands-on world, it's transferring something from one medium. Let's say we've printed a photograph to another medium. Let's say it's our paper, or a piece of wood. And so we transfer our photo to the piece of wood. So that's move one print or graphic to adhere to another place. That's what transfer kind of means. So we're going to look at that a little closer. I've got some screenshots here that I've grabbed off of some YouTube videos as I'm just searching for transfer and what types of transfers are out there. The rub-on transfer, or sometimes called a decal, I think was the first kind of transfer out in the hands-on scrapbooking world, and that's what many of us think about. When we think about transfer, that's what comes first to mind, and this is off of a video. So the scrapbooking companies created these products where they have these, like on this instance, so there's a cupcake on a clear piece of plastic, and they took a popsicle stick and rubbed it onto the paper. So it transfers from this plastic to the paper, and that's considered a transfer. And that was the first kind of transfer, I think, and then it has evolved from that. So for some of us who began doing digital scrapbooking when hands-on scrapbooking was not as evolved as it is, and we haven't kept up with the hands-on scrapbooking, this is what we think of first. Is actually a rub-on, how it rubs on. So our second one on here is transfer paper to a t-shirt. Now I've done this. You can buy transfer paper at Walmart or almost any store that sells crafty stuff, and you take and create your graphic or your photo, and you put this transfer paper in your printer, and you print your image onto the transfer paper, and then you lay the transfer paper down onto your shirt, and you iron it, and it voila comes off, and it transfers it from that transfer paper to the t-shirt. That would be another idea of transferring from one medium, the transfer paper, to another medium, the t-shirt. I already mentioned transferring a photo to wood. That's something I've always kind of wanted to do. And you can Google any one of these and find instructions on how to do them. And that's one thing I've always kind of wanted to play with. And maybe someday I will get to transfer a photo to wood. I think that'd be so cool. Just set up on a shelf in my living room or somewhere in the house. I just love wood texture too. Another kind of transfer is what they call ink transfer. These are all different combinations of words using transfer that I found while searching on the internet. An ink transfer is kind of known as like a jet ink printer. So you print on a jet ink printer, and then there are means to take that ink that you've used to print with and transfer that image. It doesn't work with other types of printers. This is from my old school knowledge. Things may be different these days, but you had to have a jet ink printer to be able to transfer. But I also found a sample which I thought was interesting, where they referred to ink transfer as basically one of the ink stamps. So you take a stamp and you get the ink on it, and you transfer that image on the stamp onto your paper. So I actually saw somebody referring to that as a transfer, and I thought that was interesting. One of the real common things is this gel medium transfer. So there's a gel in a jar that you buy that you put on things. And like I said, go out there. There are so many ways of transferring things. Go out there and search, and you'll get directions, and go to YouTube and search, and you'll see videos and be inspired. But here's a gel transfer medium on a YouTube video I saw, where she had this piece of paper with some whatever it was on it, paint or something, and she used a gel medium, and it transferred it to another paper. So from one paper to another paper. So she's lifting this up, and it's revealing how it transferred it below. And I love how this is sort of grungy. It's very artsy, like we see in a lot of our, like maybe brush strokes in our digital scrapbooking kits. But she did that with a gel medium, and this lady's doing this with a gel medium. She's taken these old images, print images. I don't know if they're out of a magazine or what, or whether she printed them on her paper. I didn't watch the video very long, but she's using a gel medium. These papers seem to be in water, to transfer it looks like she's transferring it to a napkin or something. I don't know, but she's transferring them using gel medium. Here's another lady I found on YouTube. She had these images of trees, and she's using gel medium to transfer them to paper, from one paper to another paper. And I love the look that transferring like this gives. It's kind of like almost grunged up a little bit. It doesn't transfer. When things transfer, they have like a level of transparency to them, and they have a level of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like a sharp, clear picture anymore. It's grunged up. Um, Paper napkin transfer. I watched this lady. This is actually a napkin, and she transfers this napkin to this paper. And I don't know what this is. We'd have to watch her video, but she turns this paper over on top of it and she irons it. And then when she's done, she's able to cut this out and she uses them in cards. It was quite an interesting video. So transferring from one medium, a paper napkin, to paper. I see this somewhat a little bit as stealing other people's artwork, but yet it seems to be accepted uh, that, like once you transfer an image or something in a new way and you've created something new out of it, it's like it's okay because you created it, even though you used somebody else's art. Um, so, a photo to a piece of tile. I saw that being done using Mod Podge. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So you're transferring a photo to tile. So the other medium is tile. And then I saw somebody transferring a photo. Here's her original photo to a tag. And this, I think, gives you a good idea of what I mean by grungy. See, when here's your original photo, nice and sharp and crisp, but after you transfer it, it's got these yummy lines and this other grunge out here, and this is more what a transfer is. And so people in the digital scrapbooking world would take then this tag that they have a transfer on, and they'd scan it in. And so instead of having this, you would have this in your kit. And so that is a great, great example. I'm having trouble getting this to scan back out. Then I found what was called transfer foil. And so there's foil on sheets of plastic. And just like those rub-ons, you can rub off the foil using this. They have special tools now. You see, when we first started, you had to use a popsicle stick, and now, everybody has to make their big buck, and so there's special tools now to transfer things, like she's got in her hand. Another kind of I saw was from transparency to paper. And so this lady actually printed on a sheet of transparency. If you're very old school like me, you'll remember the transparency projectors in high school, and where the teacher printed on the transparency and then projected it onto the wall in order to teach. Well, you can print on these transparency sheets of plastic and then transfer that to paper. But this is another example. That's what I want us digital people to kind of begin observing. You see how yummy this is, how not the entire, whatever that part is, I don't know if that's a leaf. I guess that's a leaf. Here's a flower, but not the entire flower transferred. And it's kind of got a transparency to it. And it's got kind of a grunge look where it's been rubbed on. That by having a transparency to it, what I mean is the paper and the texture of the paper underneath is showing through. Since this is a screenshot of a video, you can't really see that very well. And I think that's an aspect of our digital elements that we need. I didn't put this on the list, but I saw this lady was ripping these parts of a catalog out, and here's what she's ripping out with just, where it's a line of colors with shirts stacked up. And she was transferring the catalog page to washi tape. So that gives us a better idea what transferring is. Now, for a digital transfer, since we are a digital world, what does that mean for us? Now that we have a grasp on what transfer means, I have to make a transfer hands-on. So, like this lady did, like we talked about on the tag, to make a transfer like that, hands-on, to photograph or scan it, and then extract it as an element, and then use that in our digital artwork. That is, I think, the key to what a transfer element is. I think they might take a bird out of a book and transfer it onto another piece of paper. And they might add other mixed media in it and then call it a transfer when they make it into a digital element. And I want to express this is why we need to support these designers that make these transfers, because it takes a lot of work. It's not just making something digital on the computer, which also takes a lot of work, but they actually have hands-on artistic skills. And it takes a long time to drag out all of your art supplies and to make these things hands-on and then transfer them into digital. So we need to buy their stuff and support them. Second idea for digital transfer, what that means to us is that, well, it's kind of the same thing. Create and mix media in hand and transfer via scan and extract in digital. Oh, it's the same thing. I wrote it twice. So, just said it different ways as my thought process went. Another thing would be to create 100% digital the look that it gives. So when I was showing you this one and I said the look is this look as opposed to this look, you could see you can attain this look by brushes. You would add your image, you would extract it, you could add brushes to attain this look and then call it a transfer. Where's that other one? There was another one we were looking at, but I don't remember which one it was. But that is how you can do it 100% digital. So I have been working trying to create a tutorial with this technique to create 100% digital transfers. And I've been struggling with it for like 6 months and most of the time not working on it because it was just a mental block. But here is a leaf that I created as a digital transfer. I'm going to put some white background on it so you can see it. And I rather like it. But my idea was that of this rub-on. And if you think about it, when you're rubbing with the stick, you end up not covering every single area. And then you end up with this image. And you see how this rub-on, how there's white areas in here where not all of the rub-on transferred. And then you also see how it has a pink striped background and how some of the pink striped background shows through. And even down in here, you can see how it's different where not everything has rubbed on. And so you have some light areas and some dark areas, and probably each rub-on would be unique. That's kind of what I tried to emulate here. You see here, there's, if you zoom in on this leaf, there's some dark areas. Look here, where a brush might have brushed twice, or a popsicle stick. And there's some that are lighter areas. See, here's a darker area. So this one is very much like that. Um, and you don't notice it as much when you zoom out. And plus, there's a level of transparency. We're going to look at that later. So in order to create this, I tried, first I tried uh, filters like a lot of them in the, well, I'm in the full Photoshop, but a lot of them in the filter gallery. If you've taken my filter class, you know there's a filter gallery also in Photoshop Elements. And, you know, I tried several different filters and then applying them, blending them in on a duplicate layer below, and I just didn't like it. And I tried and tried and tried to come up with a unique technique for you all, and this is all I could come up with. So this is what we're doing. So here's my original photo of my leaf. I just want to show you my steps briefly. And then I used levels to brighten up the leaf. And then I did a Shift Control Alt E. I am on a PC to put that on a new layer because I wanted to preserve my original layers. And this was my new layer. And I don't know if you can see over here, but then I used a mask. I've just hit the Alt key and clicked on my mask. And so I've used my selection tools and my brushes, and I've, you know, white reveals, black conceals. You've all done this many times if you've been following all the course 2 tutorials that build on each other. But you can see here easily that I missed some spots. Um, so you can't see that here. But what I ended up doing was I duplicated the layer. This is just kind of my steps so I can preserve my steps in case I want to go back. And then I added a stroke to this layer. And at that time, this is cleaned up right now, you could see that line in here, and I took my eraser brush and I erased the areas that where I didn't have a cleanup, and now you see I have a very nice clean leaf. So those were my steps, and then I copied it again because I wanted to keep this layer. And this was the layer I actually worked on. And I started with lowering the opacity. I lowered it to 84% because you remember we talked about how the transparency has a bit of transparency. Transfer has a bit of transparency in it where you're going to be able to see what's underneath it, the texture of the paper underneath it. So I lowered that, and then I tell you what. Let's just duplicate this and I'll show you what I did. I'm going to raise this up to the top. I'm messing up my original. Oh well, let's just move on. When I close out, I won't save this. So here it is, and I've got my lowered transparency. I created a new layer, and I hit X on my keyboard to get the background and foreground as black and white, and I grabbed a brush, and I just used a, you know, hard round, or you could, I got a hard round pressure one here, I guess, selected. Make your brush size about, just visualize it, about the size of an end of a popsicle stick. And I just began brushing on it. Let's see, my opacity's at 38% on my brush. And I just began brushing on it. Now, when you're doing a rub-on, like that rub-on, like that cupcake rub-on, you can imagine that you're letting up and down, and you're probably going around the edges because you don't want the edges to come up. And then you kind of are going around the middle. And so this is kind of what I did. I just kind of pretended like I was brushing on a rub-on with a popsicle stick. Now you see we got some that went around the outside area of the leaf, and we don't want that. And the easiest way to get rid of that is I'm holding down the Alt key, hovering between these two layers till I see this arrow, and clicking down. And that connects those two layers. And then I played with blending modes, and I think, here soft light works good. This one isn't in Photoshop Elements, but it's in Photoshop. This difference, I found it did pretty well. I think I landed with soft light because that's in both digital and it's both in Photoshop Elements. It's been so long since I've recorded, and Photoshop. And then I played with my opacity to get it to look, okay. And then I did it again, and then I did it with white. Now I've got a white brush, and I'm doing the same thing. If you wanted, you could do this with full opacity and then just lower the opacity of the layer. So I'm going to hold down my Alt key, hover between the two layers, and click down. And now you see that doesn't look very good, but we're going to change the blending mode. Let's just scroll through them. Once you select one, you can hit the up or the down arrow key to scroll through them, and you see the overlay or the soften light actually look best. You could use either one. And so I'm using soft light, and I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer some more. This one's a little too much, the dark colors. So you see I've got some light areas and some dark areas now in my image to make it look like it's been rubbed on. And here I have this fabulous paper by Jean Burbois that I just got for free, I think from O-Scraps. I just put all my supplies on my EHD, so I didn't have much on my computer to pull in quickly. But I have the same leaf in two different versions here. But as you can see, let me scroll into this one. I think this one's better to see. You can see the frame shows up through this. So that's easy to see, but what's also happening is down here, the texture of the paper is showing up as well. So it looks like it's something that's been rubbed on. I could make this smaller. And this is what I used to see transparencies or transfers looking like back in 2006, 2007. I saw them showing up in my kit, and they were called transfers, and they look like this. And I think they were trying to, and they were often leaves. And that's why I went after a leaf. And that's why I thought I would do a leaf. But that's what I think the old school transfers were. But as time went on, the mixed media influenced what transfers were and influenced what transfers were in digital scrapbooking. I want to show you here. I tried doing this. Here's one I tried making of my teapot. I think it worked out okay, but I don't think it gives me the transfer as a rub-on as much. This was my first attempt, and I used the filters. and I just didn't like it as much. I liked the way the leaf turned out better and rubbing it like I just showed you. Um, I am trying to make a kit, and I made this bird, and I love the little bird. And how I made the little bird was actually with an ink stamp onto a piece of paper. This was hands-on. And then I put embossing powder over him, and I used an embossing gun. And I think that this might be more what a transfer might be for digital people, but I called him a bird. But he has no transparency to him, I guess. So that's why I called him a bird. But I did call, let me turn some of these off in my kit that I'm trying to make. I'm attempting. I did call this one a transfer, and this was what made me think, wait, why did I call that a transfer? What is a transfer? This is something I made. I used a stencil, hands-on stencil, and then I put gesso over it, and then I took a photo of it and extracted it and made snowflakes. So for me, I'm like transferring it from one medium, the hands-on on paper, to another medium, digital, by merely scanning, taking a photo of it and extracting it. I mean, the word transfer, I think, can take on a lot of meanings. Um, so anyway, here's your challenge. Let's go back down here. Here's your challenge. For this, it's wide open. You've got choices. So to complete this lesson, here's what you can do. You can create a transfer 100% digital and use it in your layout, like I did here with my leaf that I just showed you. You can create a transfer by hand and share it. If you just want to do a transfer from a photograph to a piece of wood, or from a napkin to a piece of paper, or whatever you want to do hands-on, and just take a photo of it and share it with us and say, look, this is what I did, so we can all understand what transfer means. You can do that for this lesson. Uh, and that's what I want to do. I want to try a transfer. I don't know as if I've actually ever, other than my ink, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. You can create a transfer by hand and transfer it to a layout. So that's just doing step 2 and then taking it a step further by scanning it in and putting it in a layout. Or you can use an element labeled as transfer from your stash and put it in your layout and share your layout. Share, that's the thing. Come to My Corner Online Facebook group, or you can share it using My Corner Digi on Instagram, or you can share it in the Flickr group that we have that's linked up to the website. And so just share it with us so that we can see, because it's more fun when we're all doing something. And I think if we're all doing one of these 4 things and sharing with each other, we're all going to learn more what transfer means, and how it's kind of moved over into the digital scrapbooking world. So I look forward, as always, to seeing what you do with my tutorials, because you all are way more amazing than I am. Oh, and I will be adding this leaf to the website page. So if you want to use that, that's an easy way to get this lesson done. But I'd like to see you also use other things. So, hey, happy, happy.